Japan reopens for tourism on episode 62 of today's Milenomics Squared podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Simon.
And I'm Robert Dwyer.
And this is the Milenomics Squared podcast, no annual fee edition.
If you're not subscribed to the full Milenomics Squared podcast, you're missing out on a deeper dive into topics like the following, leading off today with some great news. Japan opens for tourism on October 11th, 2022. Sam, my friend, how long have we been waiting for this?
So long that when I told my wife, she was like, I don't believe it. I don't think we're going. How many times have we canceled that trip? Talk to me when we're boarding. And I mean, we've talked about this for years, Robert, literally. Yeah.
And the stamina it takes to book, fight with the cancellations. And then, the window is coming around again. There's a different window coming around. And things are moving beneath us. And that's probably what I want to get into more than anything. You know, you've said before, as we've talked about other redemptions, other credit card angles, what have you, that things moved underneath us during the pandemic. And the example of how to book to Japan is something I've been looking at and thinking about writing a blog post on. And it's not very fun to write a blog post about something that you couldn't book anyways, a trip to Japan. But now you can. And you know what? A lot of that I learned before about how to book a family of 4 to Japan from the East Coast on really nice flights, a lot of it's changed, and not for the better necessarily. It's still possible, but it's hard. So I want to cover maybe perspective from the East Coast for me, West Coast for you, how we're getting there, what we've seen change. I mean, maybe I'm overthinking it. You know, you seem to have an easier time with it, kind of laying back and not being so rabid at the 360-day mark or something like that.
I don't know, Robert. I think I'm going to be right there with you.
The first thing I saw was that there wasn't JAL availability for what I call the famous 2 and 2. And what I mean by that is that my path to Japan was through JFK on JAL using a variety of currencies. But right at schedule open, they would typically have 2 seats in first and 2 seats in business. So you'd be able to get a family of 4 there, you know, in relative comfort. You're not all in the same cabin, but you're all in the same flight, not taking a horrendous routing. It worked out really well for us from Boston, but knocking that one seat out made it really tricky because you had to have a lot of hope and confidence that things were going to open up later close. You know, in this award travel game, we tend to deal in the very far out, the very close in, and the midterm. And I think it's more important than ever to look at trends. You know, if you looked before and said, it's absolutely every time JL opens, 2 weeks out, 2 months out, or something like that, you need to check to make sure that's still the case, because I'm here to tell you I'm not seeing it. And if you're banking on that from past knowledge, that could be a big uncomfortable problem as you get closer to the day to travel.
Absolutely, Robert. I mean, so much of what we talked about prior to the pandemic. I mean, you had gone just before everything hit. You traveled there February 2020. And all of the things that we have on the blog and the things that we talked about prior to that on booking, some of them are still true. Like, for example, pieces of them are true. For example, Asia Miles can still see 360-day inventory on award space. Mm-hmm. That's okay. That's good. That's still the same thing. But the taxes and fees have gone up.
Yeah.
And so what you end up doing is you end up verifying award space, or at least what I did. Verify award space is there 360 days out, 359, 358, 357. Someone took a seat. Ooh. 356, 350. I can change dates. It's fine. Then you get down to 330. You're slowly watching your trip dissolve away from you.
Oh, that's painful.
It's painful. And that's before they announce their reopening. So you have this issue where once you get to 330 days and you can book with something like AA, or 325 and book with Alaska, the inventory is picked clean either by, I guess, Asia Miles or JAL's own members. And so you're stuck saying like, well, now I got a trip, I got to book this. The second thing that's changed, Robert, is the cancellation policies with airlines like AA and Alaska are so favorable you have to book. Like, it's it's not frequent that I mention something that you have to do. If you're going to go to Japan next year and you're going to book it with AA or Alaska, I would just do that. I would do that if the space is there on days that work for you, and then figure everything else out. And if you have to cancel it, Robert, I'm here to say we've canceled this trip so many times with AA and Alaska that it can be done. It's relatively easy, and everything comes back with a little bit of work on your part. And I think it's worth doing. But I do think that also means that people will speculatively book out from under you award inventory very quickly, where that didn't used to happen, where you'd be able to say, I see it today. By tomorrow, I'll probably still be able to see it. No, hold it. Book it, do whatever you need to do today if you see it today.
Yeah, that's got to be painful almost, that you know that there's partners that are able to tap into award availability before you can with AA and Alaska Miles. It's almost like you'd be almost better off not knowing that was the case. Like, oh, bummer. I guess JAL never released that space. Meanwhile, there are people there, feasting on a bunch of award availability for 25 days or whatever it is. And you're like, oh, okay. But what I saw was, I have a bunch of currencies that are tied up into various programs from previous cancellations, not just Asian Miles, but JAL Miles themselves. You would think those would be the most incredible way to fly on JAL metal. And indeed, there are some benefits to having JAL Miles if you want to fly on JAL. But what I've seen is that when they release partner space, it is a very good redemption using JAL miles. Say it's like 50,000 miles or something like that. But like you said, you have to pay about $400 in taxes and fees. That's a big change. That's not good when using miles, basically anything other than a domestic carrier, meaning Alaska and AA. So I've got these stranded currencies over there. I want to use them. And you would think I'd be able to, kind of force availability by using the native currency. But I'm seeing like 300,000 miles per person one way for a business class ticket.
Wow. Yeah.
So you can get into situations where you're like halfway there, 3/4 of the way there, 7/8 of the way there, and then you need to make some tough decisions about what to do about that last seat. Does somebody stay home? Do they go on a different flight?
So I'm 7/8, Robert. How about you?
I was 7/8 until I made one of these tough decisions. So we've got more notes here in the show, and I probably will put up a blog post at some point here, because it's just there's been a lot of updates, and it's not too hard to digest if you had that previous knowledge on how to get there. And maybe worth saying that, talking a lot about JAL, there are other carriers out there, ANA being a great one. They just historically have not had the award availability, especially for a family, that JAL did. And of course, you can fly on AA, Metal, Delta. There's all kinds of ways that you could get there. But JAL really was, I think, the airline that released the family-friendly quantity, the family pack, the family size pack of award space that made it easy to get there relative to some other options, and a pretty good carrier. So I think that's the number one to focus on, but there are others.
And nonstop from Boston as well is huge for you, right?
Absolutely. That's pick number one. You talked to me about flying through some other city or something like that. Like, I'll do that under distress situation, maybe. But let's talk about some of those distress situations. Let's play a little Would You Rather. Are you ready?
I'm ready, Robert.
All right.
None of these are going to be good, I can tell.
You want to get to Japan. Okay, let's see what sacrifices you're willing to make. How do you feel about splitting up your family between cabins? First business, business premium economy, right? So, and I guess it plays into that. How important is a premium cabin for this 12 to 14 hour flight, depending on where you're coming? I think it's 14 from Boston. What is it from the West Coast?
It's like 11.
Yeah, that's a long flight no matter what. So maybe start there. Is economy a non-starter for this duration of a flight for you guys?
Well, it's better than not going to Japan, Robert. I mean, that's like
that's
we talked on the
question.
show, right? Like, is it this or this? Well, it's either this, or it's both, or it's neither. Here's the weird thing, and everybody's going to scream while they hear this, but I had 3 seats booked on a return nonstop in business, and I had a 4th seat in first class. And we talked as a family and said, no, we don't want to do that. So I actually canceled that seat. And part of it was to cancel it and see if it went back into inventory. It did not go back into inventory.
Ooh, crazy.
I can still buy the entire cabin in first class. So there's no one that's bought a seat in first class. I had a first class award. I canceled it. Didn't go back. But I ended up moving myself to economy on the hopes that, again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, I can cancel any of this. And if a business class seat comes open, as close in as the day before, I could cancel and then rebook myself into the cabin with the family. I don't want to be in a different cabin from them. And I'm lucky, I think, that it's me. I can just suck it up and do it. I think I could do it. I hope I can do it, because I really want to go to Japan, Robert. How about you? Would you split cabins?
Well, I think a lot of this has to do with the age of your kids. And
that's a good point.
A lot of people think of splitting up the itinerary as kind of wasn't it in Home Alone where the parents are sitting up front and the rest of the kids are sitting all there in the back, and they practically, they forgot one of the kids, obviously, but they really don't care about what the kids are doing back there.
They're just drinking their champagne.
Yeah. And I'm here to say everyone's situation is different, and your comfort level with, quote unquote, dumping the kids in the back, everyone's comfort level with that is going to be different. But even though our kids are older, they're teenagers now, strange things happen on airplanes. And I don't hope strange things don't happen on airplanes in the future, but there have been some distress situations that have come up for us where if the kid was in the back and I was holed up there in the front, I wouldn't like that. So I am very comfortable splitting up 2 and 2 and, father, son, mother, son in the back. That's no problem for me. But yeah, I don't like it. I don't prefer it. I mean, the flight to Boston is kind of nice in that it only has business. There is no first class there, so that's kind of straightforward. But
yeah, that is nice.
I bumped into a different situation. I was really having a tough time getting that last seat in there, and I booked. There's a premium economy seat there, and so I kind of
wait. You can't book that with AA though, right?
You're supposed to be able to, but I didn't see a way to do that, right? Because I was in the window I'm looking to go in February, so I was about, 5 months out here. And I kind of cobbled together my own half cabin by moving the 3 of us very far back in business and the remaining 4th seat, my 15-year-old, very far up in premium economy, to the point where if he looks to the left and we look to the right, I think we might be able to see him looking at the seat map. So that's about the best that I could do. And that premium economy seat doesn't look so terrible. So that's kind of a modified, kind of a 4th cabin. I mean, think about it. They got first business, premium economy, and economy. So on flights out of JFK, they have 4. In Boston, they effectively have 3. So I thought that was kind of a creative solution. And that was available with JAL miles for $35,000 one way. And I think that I might be able to upgrade that the day of at the airport. There's some, you want to spend some time diving into this stuff. Go read the JAL's website on all the different ways you can upgrade and book things with miles. It is complicated. So that was one interesting thing I came up with. And that would be a split, and it's a 3-in-1 split, but I was comfortable doing it under the situation that we're in, really piecing together that last seat out of 8. Counting both directions though. So yeah, I would do a split. But you guys weren't comfortable with the 3-in-1 with you in first. You're only comfortable with you in economy because you might move up. Or you all need to be in the same cabin.
That's a great point, Robert. You can't move down, but you can move up. Right? There's no option at the airport to go, can I trade with someone? It'll be like Home Alone where she's trading her watch and her earrings and I end up in a U-Haul with John Candy, right? Yeah, like
trolling around the gate area. Hey, mister, this is a scam. You want me to go to first? No way.
So there is that. But I think that if we have that discussion as a family, they'll cancel the trip. And so I'm playing the odds, Robert, that something's going to come up in the next few months. And I don't know that something's going to come up in the next few months. I think there's a huge difference in when you're going. But I also think that these airlines don't have a real handle on the demand and who's actually going to fly and how many people are just booking. And so I think it's going to be a very dynamic situation. And I need to be ready for anything, which might include like swapping some miles and asking you to book something for me with those JAL miles, if you want to keep that on the show or not. But
yeah, no, it's everything's on the table here. And I similarly had a debate with myself about whether to inform the family of this situation, because I can't, get excited about booking hotels and activities until I've got a handle on what's going to happen with airfare, because if the whole thing is scuttled, then it is really exhausting to go and book other stuff. So that's probably a debate you had too, like, do I bring this forward to the family? Because I would probably say the odds are in favor that he's going to be in the same cabin with us. We're never going to get to find out if we look to the right, we see him over there in premium economy, right?
Yeah, you can look at whoever's over there.
Do an example.
No, but you'll change your seats.
Photos.
You don't want to sit there, right?
It's all fine. I mean, I'm just saying that you never know. How many times have you, and I've said this on the show too, how many times have you been thinking about which seat you're going to sit in? Your meal selection.
Yeah.
I was facing this with flying Delta last weekend. What's your meal selection? And next thing you know, you're connecting through LaGuardia and your meal selection is the last thing you're worried about.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think that the connections, I looked for nonstop in all possible ways to get home without a stop, but I didn't even entertain a stop. So that's something that I didn't even look at. And if I have a conversation with the family and say, look, we can all be together, we got to fly through San Francisco and make a connection, maybe they're up for that. And, that saves the trip. I just really want to go. And I will tell you this, Robert, there is zero enthusiasm in the family to have any conversation at all about going to Japan, because it's a pipe dream still. It's even though the country's actually, when we record this, the country's not even open yet.
Right.
It's going to open. And even that is met with skepticism. Like, oh, it's not open yet? Oh, 2 weeks? Okay, well, let's talk about it in 2 weeks, So I know so many of us are excited to go back and get travel going again and get back to some normalcy. And man, it would really, really be nice for the first member of the Milenomics community to go on a regular trip. I know we've had people that have been able to go under some of the current restrictions, but just be able to go and have that trip,
It seems like it's a country that's fantastic. A lot of people have enthusiasm for it, but it's almost more desirable because it's been shut down for so long. It's like,
Right.
I've never wanted to go to Japan more.
But that might mean it's just completely overrun.
Yeah,
It might be
never
the
know.
worst time to go in the next year,
Yeah, it depends on what you do. I know your plans are
And
very
where you go.
different than
right.
what I'm going to do. I don't think there'll be anyone where you're going. Yeah, we've talked about that on the show, no matter what time of year it is. So we'll see. But okay, here's some more puzzlers. How about splitting flights? 2 people go through one city, 2 people go through another.
No
Non-starter?
way. No, there's no way. I'd be okay with it because realistically, like, how much interaction do you have while you're on the flight? And everybody's talking about like they want direct aisle access and they want the pod and they don't want to be able to see anyone. And then you have a family on there and you don't see each other for 11 hours. So what's the difference? But there's a psychological thing where you're like, well, we need to all be together because if one of these flights gets delayed or whatever, then. What if I have the car keys and you don't? Or, what if, what happens if one of us is stuck somewhere? We connect through San Francisco and we're stuck in San Francisco. And I don't like that. How about you?
No. Yeah, no, it's not going to fly. There's too many things that can go wrong, just like the distance split in the cabin on the same plane. So I guess the bottom line is we're pretty picky about this, and you can always find a way there. But I mean, I wouldn't for example, fly from, pay for a positioning flight to Chicago and then fly from Chicago to, well, gosh, you can find some scenarios where you're stopping twice in the United States for even lunch over there. Yeah. I don't have that kind of patience. So any number of those things can scuttle things for me. If there's that great option out there, I want to find a way to do it. And I think the best way to do it is to jump on it early. Push the trip out another year. Look at those trends. That is so important because if you are counting on something happening, you really can develop a feel for it by looking at what's happening in the next few days. If you want to get a feel for it in February, whether a week before they're going to open up flights, another thing I saw was that Saturdays and Sundays have far less.
That's a great point.
Permissive availability. So I can't just look at what's happening tomorrow. I need to be pretty sophisticated in the trends that I'm assuming are going to continue in the future. But again, like you said, I don't think some of these airlines have a handle on what to do for normal release patterns because how many people have been on these planes lately? It has to be low double
8.
digits in some cases. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe they kept flying them.
Remember that time that you had speculatively searched for, I think, 8 seats or something like that, or you had searched for 5 and then searched again for 5 more. And for some reason, they thought you had 10 tickets and they called you during the pandemic and they were like, are you coming to the airport this weekend? I felt like they're trying to calculate if they should gas the plane up and actually even take off, whether you're showing up. Remember that?
It was so bizarre. Yeah, right. Because I was like, wow, wide open award availability. Let me search for 5. Let me search for 8. Let me search for, and then they called me with the biggest search, asking me if I was coming to play. I'm like, how did you even know I was searching for that? And why would you think to call me? No, I'm not bringing 8 or 10 of my closest friends to fly out of Boston tomorrow. We were in the depths of the pandemic. I mean, things were shut down. They thought I was coming. I'm pretty hopeful at that point.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to close with is the exchange rate is so good.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. When I went there before, it was almost 1-to-1, maybe a little bit worse than that. But now I think it's around 0.69. Meaning it used to be a very easy conversion. Yeah, just lop off, say something's $100, you just lop off a couple of digits there.
By 10.
Yeah, but now it's $70 US dollars by $100 in Japanese goods. So I think it does make sense to get some hotel bookings in place far ahead. And
you mean prepay, right?
Well, I mean,
if you can,
that's an idea. Would you go that far? I guess if it's cancelable, sure. Right?
I am. I mean, I'm looking at Airbnb type situations, and make the payment now. Even when Airbnb says you want to pay now, and half later. I mean, you're almost playing currency arbitrage at that point because, well, what's going to happen in 4 months? I don't know. Maybe I'll wait 4 months and maybe it'll go in the other direction.
Yeah, a great point. But then look at hotel points, right? So maybe you love staying at this Hyatt and it was such a great redemption value. Maybe that exchange rate moves things enough in the direction of making sense that the award of redemption doesn't make as much sense as
that's
once
a great
did.
point. Yeah, no, that's a great point. You got to really run the numbers and calculate it with that current rate and what you might think it might be next year. Yeah.
Yeah, great point. I was thinking I could just secure the booking right now, but if the exchange rate slips back under me, it's going to do me no good. So yeah, lots to consider here and a very exciting time. All right, thanks for joining us this week. For a more in-depth discussion about points and miles, visit us at patreon.com/milenomics. There you'll get a special link to listen to additional content right in your mobile podcast app or on your computer where we speak more freely about topics like these.
As always, you can reach us on Twitter. I'm at Milenomics and Robert's at Robert Dwyer. Would love to hear from you. Till then, we'll see you on the site.